Is there hope for chronic disorganization? We'll find out today on Keeping You Organized. Today on Keeping You Organized, we are discussing chronic disorganization with an expert in that area, and that is Linda Samuels from Oh So Organized. Linda, welcome to Keeping You Organized.
Well, thanks so much for having me here today, John.
Now, you're right on the Hudson River, right, out in New York?
Yes, we actually are located between two rivers, the Hudson River and the Croton River.
Okay.
And right in the woods, and it's beautiful here.
Good. Well, let's talk about chronic disorganization today, because I think that's one of your expertises. You've, if that's a word, and you've written a book on the other side of organized, which is kind of the balance between chaos and organization. But you know, we hear this term, chronic disorganization. What does it mean? How do you define it?
Well, it's an interesting term. It was developed by one of the pioneers in the industry, Judith Kohlberg, and there are basically three hallmarks to chronic disorganization. The first one is that there is a past history of disorganization. So it's something that's existed for a long time, probably with a future expectation of more disorganization. The second thing is that the individual probably has had many unsuccessful attempts of trying to get organized, self-help attempts. It's not worked out, and they find themselves back in the same situation of being disorganized, frustrated, overwhelmed. And then the third hallmark is that the disorganization is severe enough that it impacts their lives on a daily basis in a negative way, and that could affect relationships, it could affect their environment, their work. So it's definitely not just regular being disorganized, having a little clutter. It's something that's more life encompassing.
Now, when you meet with clients, do you kind of do this initial assessment and kind of have a scoring system or something where you can kind of say, you know what, yeah, this person is chronically disorganized?
Actually, I'm not much of a scorer. The assessments, I mean, it's interesting. Organizers have so many different approaches and ways of working, and I think that the way that I generally work with people is much more holistic. There's not questions that I do ask which begin on that initial phone call, the initial conversation. But it isn't that I'm trying to box people into a certain arena. It's just that there will be certain responses I will get that say to me, this person might struggle with chronic disorganization.
Well, let's put a face on this, and don't using someone's name, but maybe a client of yours, and kind of go through that maybe that first meeting you had with this particular individual, and what you identified and said, okay, yes, this person is chronically disorganized. That way we can kind of paint a picture a little bit.
Absolutely. So I can actually start it even on that initial phone call. So the initial phone call, someone that could be chronically disorganized, it would go something like this. They would call me up and let me know that they are completely overwhelmed by their life. They have trouble moving through their space, getting to appointments on time, their relationships with their significant other and children are very stressed. Things are not going well at work. They can't find anything. They have some systems that work, but they're really not working well. Mm-hmm. And so then I might start to ask, well, what prompted your call? What made you call today? And there might be some crisis, like they just, their marriage is really tenuous at that point, that the disorganization is causing so many problems that they're thinking about not being together because one spouse cannot deal with the other spouse's habits. That happens. I do not work with clients at Hoard, but I do get those calls. So someone could be facing an eviction because there's so much clutter and disorganization going on that the building doesn't want that person in that environment anymore. So there are many scenarios why someone would call, but the overriding thing that I hear is they will say, I am overwhelmed.
Oh, okay.
And the difference is that if someone needs help organizing a closet or maybe setting up a filing system, they probably won't use that word overwhelm.
Mm-hmm. How about, so what is the difference between hoarding and chronic disorganization? I think that would be good to kind of maybe define that as well.
Absolutely. Well, there is a group called the Institute for Challenging Disorganization, which I happen to be president-elect of, and that group has developed something called the Clutter Hoarding Scale, which talks about the levels of clutter versus, on the extreme end, hoarding. So the way that I would differentiate is that you have various levels of clutter. Like even regular households have a certain amount of clutter. That might be like a level 1. And then the most extreme end would be a level 5, which would be a household where you would see full-on hoarding. And in those situations, you've got rooms that aren't used for the correct purpose, like bathrooms that can't be used as bathrooms, kitchens that can't be used as kitchens, bedrooms that can't be used as bedrooms, appliances don't work. There could be infestations of pets, I use the word pets loosely, and there is a collecting of things and not a releasing of anything.
Right. So when you're dealing with somebody that's chronically disorganized, what is kind of the first step that you use when you're trying to get your hands around it and they're overwhelmed? Usually when someone's overwhelmed, there's a lot of different things you could do. How do you decide what's first?
Well, that's a really great question, and it's funny because questions are so much a part of the work that we do. I try to go in with the approach that while I have many good ideas, I am not trying to impose those ideas. I'm really trying to ask of the person, what are they seeing? What are they perceiving as the issues? What is their most difficult area in their home or office? What is the easiest? And so there isn't like a set answer that, let's start organizing the kitchen. Through a series of questions and finding out where they are, what their goals are, what they imagine where they're trying to get to, we make a plan. And sometimes, the place that they think they might want to start, after we talk a while, they end up saying, well, no, I really can't start there. So there's a lot of factors. I mean, sometimes you're picking the place that is the place they work in the most, that they spend the most time in, and that's where they want to begin. Sometimes you start in a place where you see that you can make a change quickly so that they can feel that progress quickly, or a place where there are less emotional attachment issues, because that becomes part of what you see very often when you're working with a chronically disorganized population, is that there is a stronger attachment to their possessions, which is why sometimes that clutter develops and why it makes it that much harder to let go.
Yeah, I would think trying to have that quick victory, even if it's something that, and when you're dealing with someone who's chronically disorganized, I know there's a wide range, but are we talking, weeks, months, years? I mean, what's been the longest time frame that you've taken to work with someone and really kind of, pick apart their life and put it back together again?
That is such a great question, John. And I'm going to respond to that. And I have to tell you, it took me a while to feel okay about this answer. But I've been organizing over 20 years, and I have clients I've been working with that long. And so I used to think, well, gosh, that must make me a really terrible organizer, right? But the reality is that when you are working with this population, you are not just going in, helping them fix it, and leaving, and you're done. It's an ongoing relationship, because while you can help to create systems and make their environments the way that they really want them to be, they usually will respond very well to that maintenance piece, which means that periodically you come back and help them to kind of get things to square one. So that's one aspect of it. The other piece is that we all have challenges in life and things that happen that will make our daily routines difficult, like the birth of a child, the loss of a loved one, divorce, moving, a new job. All those big events that happen. And when you're working with a client that is chronically disorganized, those life events can just completely change how they're functioning. And so that's another reason why there's this long-term involvement, because when one of those things happens, it just upsets their life so much that they need help in just kind of getting through that part and getting back on track.
Yeah, that's great. You know, your book is The Other Side of Organization, and I know there's hope then for people like that. So when we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the book and talk a little bit more about chronic disorganization and the hope that comes with it, because I think that's what's really key. We're talking with Linda Samuels from Oh So Organized on keeping you organized today, and we will be right back after this. Do you need ideas on to-do lists, keeping focus, and filing information while on the go? The 100 Ideas for Better Organization ebook by Smead is sure to be a helpful tool for your organizing needs. Each idea is titled so you can quickly scan the book for whatever topic you may need to reference at the given time. With over 100 years in the organizing business, this free ebook will become a well-used resource and motivator for introducing ideas that boost your productivity. Get the 100 Ideas for Better Organization ebook by going to smead.com/100. Download yours now at smead.com/100. Smead, keeping you organized. We're back now on Keeping You Organized with Linda Samuels from Oh So Organized, based in right outside of New York City. And Linda, we've been talking about chronic disorganization. Kind of, we defined it a little bit, and we talked about how there's not really one size-fits-all solution. But let's talk a little bit about your book, you know, The Other Side of Organization, where we get a little bit of that hope. And maybe even as you're discussing with clients, how do you kind of give them a glimpse of, you know, there's hope for this?
Well, you know, in my book, The Other Side of Organized, the whole idea behind it is that I'm really writing to all those people that do struggle with that organizing piece, because I totally believe in the idea of hope, that as long as someone is ready for change, as ready as they are, and we're ready at different levels at different times, there's always possible for movement and for growth and for something different. And so one of the things I do is that when I am meeting someone new, and even in the process of when I'm working with them, I'm always on the look for what's working, what are they doing well, what has changed, and bringing that back to show them. You know, kind of holding that up in the mirror so that they see that there is a change. They see that it's possible to be better. And frankly, even though I'm working with people fairly regularly over an extended period of time, every time I see them, the objective is to move from that moment to a better moment. So I'm always trying to leave them feeling better than when I walked in. And you know, it usually works.
Well, I was going to ask you, have you ever had a conversation with someone, they've called you the first time, and you've decided that, you know, either they weren't ready and didn't want to move forward, or you thought, you know what, you're not ready to move forward, and let's maybe talk in 6 months, or I mean.
Oh, absolutely. What I will say is that very often people do call and say they're ready, and then when you actually start the work, they're not so ready, because it's hard. It can be hard. But that, as long as they're willing, it's okay. You just work with them until they're ready for something bigger. You take little steps at a time. But there absolutely have been times where a potential client calls, and in their responses, I can hear that either they're really not ready and that it would be not a prudent use of their dollars to invest in working with an organizer at that moment, or it might be that really they need a different kind of support, like the support of a therapist or someone else. And so if I'm hearing that, I certainly will make that suggestion first, because I don't ever want to take on a client that I'm not the right fit. There also could be timing issues. Maybe they need to work in a certain time frame that I'm not able to accommodate. there could be certain things they're asking for that are not my skill set, and then I will refer out to my colleagues. I've got wonderful colleagues all over the world, and I have no hesitation, sending them to someone else that can help them better.
Well, let's move back and start about your beginning of your career. How did you get involved in organizing, and what made you do it?
Well, it's so interesting. There's this, I think within our industry, when you talk with other organizers, what you find out is that they've either come to the industry because they themselves were born organized. You've probably heard organizers talk about being born organized. Or they could come to the industry because they have struggled themselves so much and learned how to do it. And so we've got those two different avenues to enter the industry. And I entered from the born organized lane. But frankly, it was not anything that I ever thought about. Like, I was just naturally organized. I loved organizing. I was the kid that liked to line up all her nail polishes in order and color code her clothes and, make lists. And I just derived a huge amount of pleasure from it. Some people might say that's sick, but nonetheless, I enjoyed it.
Well, the fact was that was at the age of 4, right?
Yeah, at the age of 4. Yeah, I kind of came out, folding my diapers, that kind of thing. So, but what happened was that wasn't the industry that I began in. I have an art background, computer graphics background, and at a point I had wanted to start my own business. And I started to think about what could that business be? And at the time, the natural thing would have been to go in the computer graphics industry, maybe set up a design studio or something like that. But I had young kids, babies at that time, and I knew that industry, which I had been in, wasn't really conducive to raising a family. I also wanted to work personally with people in their homes. So I started to think about the different things that I could do. And I had this idea that people always noticed about me how organized I was and wondered, particularly parents with young kids, how was I managing everything? Mm-hmm. So this question kept coming up to me from different friends and family. And I started to think about, wow, it's that organizing piece that's always helped me in whatever I've done. I took it for granted in the same way that I have, brown curly hair, I'm short. I never really thought much about those things either. But I realized, wow, this is not just a skill that I have, but it's a teachable skill. And so I started to think about how could I turn that into a business. And that was really how it started. I developed a business model. I thought that my initial clients would be families with young kids, just like myself, that were struggling with just managing the chaos that happens when you have kids and you're working or you're trying to do all the activities that you're doing. And that's really how it started. So, do you remember back to your first client there in 1993 and who that was and what you did for them? I do, although I like to protect their privacy.
Yeah, I'm not the name.
But I will say that the first client that I had called me in. They had just moved into our area, and they called me in to help them organize them into this new home. And I worked with them for a long time. It was a wonderful experience, organizing everything from kitchens to bedrooms to books to libraries and things like that. It was great.
Well, let's forward now 20 years later. Here you are. Let's think in the last week or 2 weeks. Give one organizing tip that you gave to somebody else to use, whether it was a client or even a friend. But what's the latest organizing tip that you gave somebody?
Ooh, okay. I don't know if it's the latest, but I would say one of the tips is that when we're organizing, there's often a lot of items that end up getting edited out. So the key is making sure they exit the house immediately. So, because those things can tend to sit around. And so when you're organizing, you want to not just organize and edit, but you want to complete that cycle and let things exit.
Well, let's talk about your own personal organizing. How do you do it? Do you use a paper planner, digital planner? How do you organize your day?
Well, one of my favorite tools, I did make a switch a few years ago to go all electronic. And while I do love paper, and I I do have my Post-it notes, and I do like to make my little list. But what really keeps me able to manage it all is I use my iMac, my iPhone, and my iPad. And the app that I love is called To Do, the number 2DO.
Okay.
And that, oh, do you know that one?
No, I'm not familiar with that one, but that
Oh.
I've actually heard of it, but I have never used it before.
Okay, so that's a favorite app of mine. It's very visual. It allows me to put the things that I want to accomplish on a particular day right on the list. I can create sub-lists like books that I want to read or things that I want to do. And I can also future plan. So there's, for instance, just to give you an example. So last night on my list, it said to prepare for the interview today, which involved just going over the notes, how to connect with Skype again, how I was going to set up my computer. And then, today I have other things on my list that I have to do. So
Great. Well, we're almost out of time. I want to give people an opportunity to connect with you because you do work with clients all over the world. You do virtual coaching, and so tell us a little bit about your services in just a real quick nutshell, and then how people can get a hold of you.
Sure. Well, most of the work I do is hands-on, but I also work with people over the phone, and so I can work anywhere. And the best way to reach me is either by telephone. Do you want me to give my telephone?
Sure, give your phone number out.
Sure. It's 914-271-5673. Or you can connect with me on, I have two websites, ohsoorganized.com and theothersideoforganized.com. I'm pretty active on social media, so you can always connect with me by email, by Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Google+, you name it. I'm also a blogger, so I'm regularly posting, and there are lots of great conversations going on the blog, so I encourage you to stop by there and love to connect.
And your book, The Other Side of Organized, where can people find that at?
They can find that everywhere. You can type it in, get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go to my website and click to a link. It's also available in ebook format on all the formats. So if you prefer non-paper, for the non-paper likers, it's great for that. And I also have a free newsletter you can sign up for on either of my websites. So I invite you to come and connect.
Great. And we'll put that information in our show notes as well, so if people didn't get a chance to write that down, they can find that as well. Well, Linda, thank you so much for the time. It went by really fast, but and hopefully we'll have you back on again to talk more about disorganization, because that keeps our show in business, is keeping people organized, right? And I think regardless of whether you use paper or electronic, disorganization will always be there. So.
But there's hope, right, John?
There is hope. That's the message we got from today. So appreciate your time, and we'll talk again soon.
Great.
It's Linda Samuels from Oh So Organized today on Keeping You Organized.